The Malcontentment TANGO is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, malcontents, and welcome to another edition of Malcontentment Happy Hour. I am not the malcontent. I am four ducks in a human suit. How's everybody doing tonight? This is going to be a little bit of an old school happy hour. There's been a lot that has been going on this week behind the curtain on the Malcontentment Tango, and the real job has been really busy, which is a good problem to have. So we don't have all the clips and the cutaways and all. So this is going to be a little bit of an old school show, and you never know what's going to happen. Tonight our show is brought to you by Bumblebee Tuna, the most aerodynamic tuna in the world, and soup for my family. But more on that later. All right, with that, why don't we just go ahead and jump into things. First story that we're following tonight is breaking news out of Hazel Dell, Washington. If you're not familiar with Hazel Dell, Washington, that's kind of like Proud Boys, Washington. That is Chud Central.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
That is what Hazel Dell is. There is reports of a police shooting out of Hazel Dell, and that it's being investigated, and that is all kind of the confirmed information we have. We have some additional information. Fact checkers are working right now as I'm talking to figure out if this is fact or fiction. And I went on the air without talking to the team. I have my phone, so if there's something like breaking, don't call, of course, but you can go ahead and message me up. I do have it open, and the ringer is off, though. So it will depend on me to look down on it. But we are looking into trying to get some information out of Hazel Dell. We have a name, but we're working on getting that name confirmed. We don't want to go in the air without that. First thing I want to talk about tonight is the King 5 story that came out. So King 5 promoted that they were going to do this story that was going to show information on the hundreds of protesters that have been going on there. There was a fair amount of concern and angst, including from yours truly, that this would essentially just turn into a doxing episode. At the end of the day, right, because there's this collage of pictures that they've been promoting, and this collage of pictures kind of are people in not booking photos or mugshots. It does appear that most of the people that were highlighted in that story have either gone all the way through the courts and are out on the other side, or are currently pending a hearing and litigations and are presently in jail. That's the impression I was, although I have to confess I didn't see maybe the first 30 to 45 seconds of that story. So I guess my view is this isn't as bad as things are promoted. I don't want to get lost on that, because I think what may have gotten lost is there's some really interesting numbers that King 5 presented in that story that I want to unpack, because there is stuff to unpack here in that story. The first thing that I want to unpack is the stats that they released for people arrested and criminally charged. The first number, I was surprised. The number of people that charging documents have been filed since the protest began on May 30th with City of Seattle Municipal Court, which that is going to be gross misdemeanor and below. Felonies go to King County. is only 260. I was really surprised when they said that number was 260. Now that's 260 cases referred. Half of those cases, the prosecutor's office in the Municipal Court of Seattle said, we're not doing anything with this in the end. And that aligns with the stats that we released a couple of weeks ago. So the stats that were out, and that data goes all the way back to 2016, which is the most recent year that data is available. 46 cases referred to Seattle Municipal Court. The Municipal Court doesn't do anything with. So they're not doing half with the arrests that are referred to them for charges by Seattle police, and that then is consistent with 2016 data. So for the chuds,
it's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller,
who may be wringing their hands and going, they're just letting them all go. Actually, statistically, that's about the same numbers that they've had in Seattle since before Dear Leader was made president. So no, it's not that. That's where the number's at. But here's the number that I think may get lost in the communications and the talk about this story, and I want to make sure it doesn't. They went into the races of people that have been charged, not arrested, but charged. And it's things that make you go, So 48% of the people that have been arrested and then followed on to charges are white. Well, that's very interesting because Seattle is, anybody? It's about 70% white. 70% white. All right. And 18% of the people charged are black. Well, Seattle's about 7.5% black. So it's more than 2x. Do you see the bias in the system? Do you see the inherent racism in the system? Because I know from behind the camera, I've seen it and I've called it out, and people who actually watch the streams objectively have seen it, and not just in Seattle. Saw it in Portland. We highlighted this incident in Portland where there was a BIPOC woman, a light-skinned BIPOC woman who is in front of me and moving faster than me. And we have it on the video, and the police officer actively targeted her, gave her a very, very hard shove, told her to walk faster. And that officer was behind me, moved in from behind me and targeted her directly and then harassed her a couple of more times. That's just one quick example that I know that people can just go look through the archives in the library. And if I had a little more time, I would have teed up that clip. And if we had some more time, I would have teed up some other clips to demonstrate this, where people of color are targeted over people who are white. And this also happens in the streamer community. And white streamers get more breaks from the police than persons of color and black. Omari has eaten more friggin' tear gas and pepper spray and batons and pushed down. And you can't tell me that there isn't one police officer in the city who doesn't know who Omari Salisbury is. I can thank Mike Solon for making sure that there is not a single police officer in the city of Seattle who doesn't know who I am. Thank you, Mike. It's just another example of the institutional racism that people are protesting against. Because remember, chuds.
These are chuds.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Remember, chuds. You're the ones who go, where are all the black people? We don't see all the black people in the video. And the streamers are the ones that are going, oh, this fucking comment again. Let's go over it again, chuds. Seattle is about 7.5% black. If you see 100 protesters and there's 7 black people, guess what? You have a representative sample of the population of Seattle. If you are in Portland and you see 3 black people out of 100, that is a representative sample of their population. Because remember, Oregon started as a white-only territory. And one of the reasons why Seattle is so white is because historically there were many white-only neighborhoods in Seattle. And in those covenants, you could not sell your property to a black family. So there were laws to keep black families out. And one of the first black families to move out in the Washington area, a person in Shoreline, who was a major activist, was assassinated. And of course, that crime's never been solved. I know King County is still working really hard to figure out who threw those fire bombs at Black Coffee. Aren't you, King County? We'll call that one out again. Let's see. Black Coffee Northwest firebomb, 0 arrests. Windows broken October 3rd at Starbucks, 16 arrests. And don't forget those watching, half of those people aren't even going to get charged because that's what the stats are. And we also know that for one person, because they've been very public about it, we'll say their name, which is Bennett, the charges were completely BS because Bennett was nowhere around there because the streamers were there to document that. So that's enough on those numbers and those stats. I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is some stats that have come out about C disease. If you're newer to the stream and you're going, C disease is we don't say that word because anytime we say or type that word, the chuds start mass reporting this stuff, and we got shut down, I don't know, like in May, I think, for like 3 days because we were doing a ton of, C disease coverage. So we say C disease. We could be talking about cancer. We could be talking about a cure. I don't know. C disease. Every 1.2 seconds. An American finds out they have C disease. Every 107 seconds, an American is dying of C disease. That means if you're listening to my voice and you are diagnosed with C disease while this show is running, you have a 1 in 89 chance of dying from C disease. And those numbers are only going to get worse because we are looking at multiple states having hitting multiple records for positivity and hospital number of people in hospital. Wisconsin is on the brink of disaster, and that is the operative word here. They estimate they will be out of ICU beds in 1 to 2 weeks. They have 187 ICU beds left, as I say this tonight, in the entire state of Wisconsin. And that's already, again, kind of doing this well. We're going to double people up and we're going to convert these wards and they're going to be tapped out. And so what happens when they tap out? They're going to start flying those patients to other places, just as we're seeing happening in Idaho, where they want to send their patients to the anarchist jurisdictions of Seattle and Portland. That's right. Those chuds.
What's this?
We have a chud. Definitely have a chud.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
These are chud.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
A cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller. A chud, all right?
Chud, 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 chud.
Yeah, that's what you've got. You have a large number of chuds in the panhandle of Idaho who are refusing to wear masks. And by the way, their medical, the county medical board, first of all, you don't have to have any experience in medicine to be on the county medical board, apparently, in Idaho. And among them is a C disease denier and another individual who's like, herd immunity, whatever. Hey, if it's herd immunity, whatever, keep your friggin' patients in Idaho because, you know, it's herd immunity, whatever. Why should the medical community here in the anarchist jurisdictions of Seattle and Portland, why do you want to send them here? Why? It's chaos and awful here. The city's burned down. You saw it on Fox News, so you know it's true. So you're going to get your people safe in the panhandle of Idaho who are dying of a disease that you say doesn't exist, and you're going to fly them to the hellhole, burnt to the ground, anarchist jurisdictions of Seattle and Portland to get medical care. Take all the time you want to unpack that, malcontents, while we play our first commercial.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Black Coffee Northwest is located in Shoreline, Washington at Highway 99, aka Aurora Avenue and 170th. They are on the west side of the road. They are open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m., and they are open on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I understand it's really good coffee. So support a Black-owned business, support a business that supports Black youth and Black education, and go get yourself some Black Coffee Northwest. My understanding is they source their beans from Africa, and if you've ever been to Africa, it is the best damn coffee on the planet. Coffee was ruined for me after going to Africa because American coffee sucks. I've heard that people say it around the world, and I've been to other countries, and I've been to Europe, and I've been to Latin America and South America, and I'm like, I don't know. Wow, Africa, yeah, Africa's enlightened me. Our coffee sucks. All right, their coffee doesn't. With that said, the next story I want to get into, hey, the United States is prepping for civil war. You're being dramatic. No, I'm not being dramatic. There's some people that noticed today that there were businesses that are already boarding up in downtown Seattle going, what's going on with that? Did they know something we don't know? There are businesses that are boarding up all over the United States. Large corporations are boarding up their business because there is such a concern about civil unrest after the election. There are a lot of people, like we see it in the comments, right? And it's usually coming from the Chuds. This will all be over at 11:04, right? And again, it's Chud comments.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
And no, it's not going to be over 11:04. And it's like, because it doesn't matter what the outcome is going to be over. What you think all the Black Lives Matter protesters are going to go home at 11:04, regardless of the outcome? Like they're going to go home because they are so demoralized if Trump won, or they're going to go home to go, see, mission accomplished, Biden won, it's all solved, we get to go home. Are you kidding? Do you really think that the Proud Boys are going to be like, oh, Trump won, all right, it's all good, we go chill out now? You really think that they're going to go, okay, fine, Biden won, whatever, we'll go back to our basements? You really think that? Like, what planet are you on? Where's my button? I can't find my button. Really? Oh, here it is. Well, I lost the dramatic pause. We'll use that button later. I had to reshuffle buttons just for this show. Another part of like, okay, this is totally normal. Not is Walmart has pulled all of their guns and ammunition off the shelves in all the Walmarts because we don't think anything's going to go on, but we just want to make sure that we're not arming America any more than they're already armed, because America is already armed to the teeth, baby, and people are ready for it to throw down. You know, this is my opinions here. My opinion is all this doesn't end come 11/4. Proud Boys, Patriot Front, Patriot Prayer, Three Percenters, American Wolf, Adam Waffen, they're not just going to go like, if Trump wins, it's going to get worse. Likewise, BLM ain't going home in 11/4 because they haven't got what they've looked for in their demands. So that's just part of it right there. 75% of Americans in a recent survey that was published in USA Today, 75% of Americans are worried about civil unrest or disruption. And there are other signs that people are already kind of starting to stock up in the stores. And there are concerns in some of the supply chain circles that we may start seeing shortage, which is not me saying go out and pay. You're scaring people. I am not saying go to the store and buy all the friggin' toilet paper. Let me say it again. I am not saying go to the store and buy all the toilet paper, okay? By the way, that's going to be the least of your worries. Change your priorities. It's not about the toilet paper. With that said, there are some concerns in supply chain circles that we may see as we get later into November, shortages on certain items in stores because people are going to be overstocking. Full stop. There are some things that people, because Americans have short memory, that we were already warned will probably be in shorter supply as we go into the winter season. And one of those things, I'm not making this up, is soup for my family. That's right. This actually may be in short supply when we get into the winter months. What are you talking about? Because Antifa's buying it all up to throw at people? No, that's not why. See, soup isn't an item that's typically bought in the summer months, right? I mean, that's pretty logical, right? People generally in the United States don't like eating soup when it's hot. People in other countries find that weird. They eat soup all the time. But here in the United States, we're not big soup fans when it's hot. And so manufacturers who put soup in cans, in particular, aerodynamic cans, soup for my family. What they do is over the summer months, they build up inventory because they don't have enough manufacturing. If they had manufacturing capacity that was sitting idle over the summer, they lose a shit ton of money, right? So in lean manufacturing, and lean manufacturing applies to basically everything, you need to be using your manufacturing line at least at 95% capacity to be profitable, especially on something like food, which is low margin. So during the soup that would be made that we buy in the winter months is actually made in the spring and sits on shelves and then gets sent to the store. And of course it's fine because soup lasts for years in a can. So there's nothing unsanitary or weird about that. But what was happening in March, April, May, and into early June? People were hoarding soup. And one of the things I was telling people was it was a good thing to buy, not to throw at people, but if you live in the Pacific Northwest in particular, you should be ready for the 9/0 earthquake. And what's great for the 9/0 earthquake? Aerodynamic soup for your family. Not only can you eat it, but you can throw it at people that are trying to steal the soup for your family if we ever have the 9/0. So that is why things like canned soup will probably fall into short supply this winter because there was no chance to resupply and stock up, and they're not going to add additional manufacturing capacity to deal with that. And then again, you get into the winter months and people want soup. So it's not all because Civil War, and it's not all because of Antifa's buying all the soup to throw at people or light bulbs. Bellevue. Light bulbs? Balloons? What? Can't have balloons. You can't have, but you can have a loaded AR-15. That was some amazing thought process there at Bellevue on Saturday. And I'll say it on the air. They didn't have to show up. They could have just no-showed. They could have just no-showed the protesters on Saturday at Bellevue, and they would have accomplished what they were going to accomplish because of all of the clutching of pearls that was going on there. It was quite amazing. It is also probably the most number of
cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers
that I had seen. And I don't mean Katie, who by the way showed up at King 5 today. And she was, I don't know if everybody caught a Joey's feed, but she was told to step away from the officers, which I found utterly amusing. She also got to experience some white privilege firsthand, because if that was TK or Tati or almost any other black person and their plates were expired, ooh, that would have been probable cause time. We got probable cause. They told Katie to take a walk over the PA system, no less. And then they had to walk over to her car and tell her, Katie, take a walk. Katie, you should listen to the police. You know, you claim that you support them and all. I see you went after me again. I thought we had an understanding, but I guess not. But I thank you for amplifying our voices very much. I've said on air, and I have written, that I feel we're already in a state of sectarian violence, and I'm not going to sit here and rattle off all the examples of this. There's no need to rehash it. You either believe it or you don't. And I think people hear the word sectarian violence and they think religion. Sectarian violence isn't exclusive to religion. It is simply people that are very polarized on political ideals. I think the other thing is that we've had two tipping points that have happened in this country roughly at the same time. Tipping point number one that we've had is George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement. That 8-minute and 46-second video, that was a tipping point. Ferguson wasn't enough. Trayvon Martin wasn't enough. Tamir Rice wasn't enough. But George Floyd, that was the tipping point. Read the book Tipping Point. You'll understand what I'm talking about. Even if you're a chud, it's an easy read. Honest. I hate reading. Tipping Point's an easy read. You can bang that out in a night. And it's one of those and as you read it, you're like, yes, I recognize tipping points. The other tipping point that we've had in this country is the Q conspiracy. I don't think, I've read if Trump goes away, the Q conspiracy will go away gradually. Nah, it'll just morph. There's aspects of the Q conspiracy that will go away. Certainly at some point, Bill and Hillary are going to die and you just can't. So then what? Are they like zombie vampires feeding off of blood in a sex cult? Is that where that's going to go? Because then that really gets truly batshit crazy, right? So aspects of it will die, but there's other parts of it that will come to in a line as it goes. So I think the sectarian violence, regardless of what will happen, will get worse. The thing that I am concerned about is that things have quieted down while the chatter has ratcheted up. Now, the other thing that I have witnessed firsthand is the chuds in the right wing talk a really strong game. But it appears that their active numbers that they think they have are grossly underestimated. There are a lot of people who are essentially couch warriors. They sit on their couch, they're on the computer, and they say all the hateful comments and stuff. But when it really comes down to, all right, you need to come with your gun and be ready to kill and be ready to be killed. Go ready to beat your maker and take out as many of them as you can before you go. And there's a whole bunch of them that go, no, that sounds really unappealing. And part of the reason that sounds really unappealing is that people haven't reached a state of hopelessness where they're necessarily ready to die for their cause, or zealotry. However, both of those are growing. And so I think when people hear the words civil war, what they think is North versus South, or they think like Syria, or they think like Darfur, or they think Yemen, right? They hear civil war and that's what they think. I don't think that we're going to have a civil war like that in the United States. I think what you have happen in the United States is something that looks a lot more like Northern Ireland in the 70s and 80s and into the early and mid 90s. Technically, the IRA and the British didn't have their full ceasefire, that's a tongue twister, until about 2005. Although basically hostilities had stopped for years before that, they hadn't signed on the dotted line on that. Another thing that kind of comes to mind is I say this one cautiously because this is very, very religious based, but like Israeli and Palestinian style kind of violence, which is very similar to Northern Ireland. People will generally go about their lives. And there'll be bombs going off, or something will get shot up, or there'll be this group that's going to protest because of something that happened 100 years ago, and another group is going to come and confront them over something that happened 50 years ago, and they're going to have knives, and they're going to have guns, and there isn't going to be enough police there to deal with it, and things are going to get ugly, and then everyone will be mad about that, and then they'll go back together and go back to killing each other 2 or 3 weeks later. Because I've said it many, many times. Every person that gets zinged with a rubber bullet, every person that gets hit with a paintball, every housewife that sucks in tear gas, you create 10 more pissed off people. This is human nature. People that are experts in this will tell you the exact same thing. And what we have seen in states, because I know there's arrest them all. First of all, remember, when you say arrest them all, that means you want high taxes. It's not free to arrest people. So you're pro-tax when you say arrest them all. Because remember, those Seattle police officers cost $153,000 a year before benefits. Just remember that. So when you say arrest them all, what you really saying is, I want to pay a lot more taxes. Dow Constantine, tax me more. How does that feel?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
Tax me more, because I want to arrest them all. Lawyers aren't free, prosecutors aren't free, jail cells aren't free. Why do you think they were releasing half the people arrested as is? Not to mention that Seattle police don't have evidence on a lot of people that they're arresting on stuff. By the way, I was approached by somebody on Monday who told me that my video actually got charges dropped on them. So I know this is a hot topic. Also, in some circles, it does cut both ways. They were arrested for something very, very specific. They weren't even in the area. And it was literally my video that was like, it wasn't this dude. And that was a dude that was actually looking at something that was really potentially significant. You'll have to apologize as I eyeball the phone a little quick. I'm just looking to see if we have any update on Hazel Dell, which we don't. Oh, there has been an update. 1 second. It is a police shooting. That's all we know. It happened in the parking lot of a bank in Chud Central. Proud Boy Central, Hazel Dell. Next thing I want to talk about on the list here, and this one is really more for the national audience than for the state of Washington audience. Vote, 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 vote. If you are back to this whole issue of sectarian violence, there is a growing body of evidence that there is significant voter intimidation that is going on in the United States, from armed militias showing up at early polling sites, to ballot boxes being set on fire, to people being intimidated, to multiple incidents of people, mostly people wearing Black Lives Matter, but there have been a couple of reports of other people from the other side that are wearing things, like Blue Lives Matter, being yanked out of lines and being told they can't wear that. Yes, they can. Those are not, there is not Blue Lives Matter on the ticket. There is no political party that says Blue Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is not on the ticket. Black Lives Matter is not a slogan to any political party. Pollsters, get it through your frickin' heads. People do have the right to wear that stuff when they show up to vote. Now, somebody can't wear a MAGA hat because that is a slogan, or Make America Great, or I don't even know what Biden's slogan is, which I guess goes to show as the better marketing. This is the marketing person. But vote. And here's the other thing. If you can vote early, or if you have a ballot already, do not put your ballot in the mail. Even if you're in Pennsylvania and North Carolina and you heard that the Supreme Court said, why, yes, your ballot can arrive late and it will still get counted. Do not chance it. Because just because that came down doesn't mean that the Republican Party, which is trying to do everything it can to get votes not counted, won't go to the Supreme Court with a different angle to get those ballots that come in invalidated. So if you have the capability and where you live supports you being able to go somewhere and going, here is my ballot. I'm going to put it in the box, or I'm going to watch you put it in the box, and it is a legal ballot drop. You should go do that. It is too late to put your ballot in the mail. If you're in Washington State, you probably should just go put your ballot in the box. Here is the other thing. Even if you mean well, you really have to understand state laws, because some state laws, when a person goes and drops off the ballot, the law is that person has to physically be there to drop off their ballot. That's not in all states, but it is in some states. And so even though you may be altruistically doing the right thing, going, I'm going to go drop my ballot. Oh, hey, really? Here's mine. Can you go bring it? As much as you're like, cool, I can totally bring that. There are people filming, and you just don't feed the beast. I'll give you an example. My mother is in lockdown by the way, Mom Malcontent is watching tonight. I forgot to say that. So spam those hearts for Mom Malcontent. Spam the hearts for Mom Malcontent, because I did see that she is watching tonight. Hi, Mom, I'm on TV, like in 20 houses. I've hit the big time. No, like seriously, Mom, people are likely watching this right now on their TV, like not on their phone or their little thing. You can, I'll, if I was allowed in your place, I'd show you how to do it. So she's watching on a Fire tablet, it would be my guess. So anyway, spam those hearts for Mommy Malcontent. But, she's in a facility that's locked down. So, in those cases, yes, they can take the big stack of, the ballots because they're taking it for people that can't physically are able to go to the ballot box. That's different, right? If your neighbor is disabled or infirmed and says, hey, can you take that? That is legal just about everywhere, but you should check your local laws first. So vote, vote, vote. There's another thing that's tying into this. Iowa peeps. Because we do know that people watch around the United States. Iowa peeps. Especially if you're in the Metro Des Moines area. Your leaders in Des Moines have removed 267 ballot locations, voting stations and ballot locations to protect you from C disease. This is the same state that's like, yeah, hey, dear leader can come and have his super spreader event and you don't have to wear a mask. But all of a sudden, those same people really care about you in Des Moines. They want to make sure you're safe from the C disease and to help keep you safe in the bluest of the blue county with one of the biggest populations. In Iowa, they're take away 267 of your voting locations. So if you're in Iowa, you need to figure out now where you're supposed to go vote. Don't get disenfranchised over this. We're doing it for you. Yeah. We haven't done anything for you for C disease since this whole thing started. We have a governor who thinks it's complete BS. We have a senator who doesn't even know what the price of soybeans are and sucks up Donald Trump like a leech, and also thinks that the whole C disease thing is whatever. But we want to keep you safe. Also, don't forget Texas peeps that there is only one ballot box per county. If you're planning to do early voting and drop off that ballot, or you have a ballot and you're going to physically drop it off, if that be the case, you should take care of it this weekend. And you should be prepared, potentially, particularly if you're in rural counties, for a long-ass drive. If you're in an urban county, like Harris County, you better be ready for a long-ass wait. But get those ballots in. Don't get disenfranchised. And so vote, 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 vote. On the subject of Harris County, one other thing that's really fascinating there, more people have voted in Harris County, Texas tonight as I talk about this than voted in 2016. That isn't like voted for either Trump or Clinton. That's total. More people have early voted in Harris County than everyone who voted in 2016, which is really, really amazing. And with that, I'm going to go to our next spot.
To the side. Music has a power greater than words can really express. Songbird, sing a song to me. Let me know where I'm supposed to be. It's such a shame, yeah. Well, I was your TV girl. The EP is called Blue, and my website is classicelishamusic.com.
So there you go. I've covered everything I was going to talk about. That's the whole list. We don't really have any more information on Hazel Dell. We don't have a name there, but there is an officer involved shooting. We don't have a name. We don't have confirmation on the status of the person who was shot, nor do we have the information on the who, what, where, why, and when. We don't even have information on whether that was Clark County that was involved or another police agency, but we are working on that information. Hazel Dell again is really kind of like Proud Boy, like literally, it's like Proud Boy Central down there. So it'll be interesting to see the information that comes out of there. Another thing actually is out of Michigan. A white nationalist Nazi leader was arrested out of Michigan because of violent attack that they had done in 2019, as well as additional plotting. What's up with you, Michigan? FBI in Michigan's like on their game. Like, what's up with that? Y'all like, did the real hardcore ones leave Idaho and now they're in the Upper Peninsula? And what is it about y'all congregating in the phallic part of states, right? The Idaho Panhandle. You're in that little kind of willy whacker that's up there at the top of Michigan. That one's a little more limp looking, you know. And then Florida, that's like America's penis, and it's kind of infected and drippy. That's the islands that lead out there to Key West. What is it with you and going batshit crazy in the friggin' panhandles and phallic part of states? All right, that's enough of that stuff. There's an interesting little bit of situation going on here. Your comments are scrolling on the screen up here perfectly, and they're scrolling on my screen down here perfectly, but none of your comments are actually showing up in the comment section. And I have seen that the comments have been like flying, and I can't. I went to go back to go look for your questions, and I can't see your questions. You gotta love technology. The last thing I'll talk about, which is not part of the planned conversation, is I want to talk about kind of the future of the Malcontentment Tango, because we are going through a pivot, as we would say in the tech industry, of which I spent more years than I care to admit at this point. But we are going through a bit of a pivot. There's people, there was somebody on Twitter today. You remember when Mal was a journalist before this whole thing a long time ago? Kind of like this whole snarky thing. It was like, hi, how you doing? Yeah, I was an adventure and travel writer for 5 years. I didn't say from 1999 to 2004, but from 1999 to 2004, I headed up actually one of the largest outdoor adventure websites in the United States, and a very heavily trafficked website that I successfully sold in 2004. And so I had like people working for me, and I traveled to over 154 destinations in those 5 years, won some awards for photography, won one writing award for a piece that I did on the Grand Canyon. So yes, you know what? I have been a writer. I was actually syndicated in about 20 different places, moving up again through 2004. And then I continued to do some writing for the new owners of the site as part of my transition agreement with them through 2005. So, yeah. Funny, when I explained all that in a tweet, they didn't have anything to say. So, it's not exactly my first rodeo, but I certainly didn't wake up on January 1 of 2020 going, I think I'm going to get back in the publishing business. This was not on my radar, nor certainly was George Floyd, C disease, Black Lives Matter, none of this. There was a very, very different trajectory that I had planned, but yet here we are. And what's happened is we found a niche, and we found our voice, and we know that because we look at the numbers, and we look at the audience, and we look at the demographics, and we look at the feedback we're getting, and we know that we're providing some value. We are providing something in the space that wasn't provided before. And so there was this slow motion revamp of our website that's been going on. There's been people, I know there's been something, well, he has this website, he hasn't updated in months, there's hardly anything on there. Yeah, because we were doing a lot of other stuff behind the curtain. And with everything else that was going on, it kept kind of getting pushed down as a priority. When Renee Rackety from Seattle Gay News came on board to start doing writing and video and photography for us, of which I'm just so honored to have her presence among us, this served as a big forcing function to get the website up and going. So we got the website up and going, and we soft launched it for all, we would say in the business, it was a soft launch on Monday. We're still working a couple of kinks out, just a couple of things we're finding. It's like, it doesn't work, and that's how it goes. But I will say this, our traffic increased exponentially from Monday to Tuesday, and then our traffic increased exponentially again from Tuesday to Wednesday. And we have stunning numbers coming to the website. And that's really exciting to see that, because again, it indicates to me that we are providing a niche, a spot that is underserved. We have brought on a social media director, and that person is still ramping up. And so there's been things where I've been saying where it's like, I'm getting too old for this shit. And like, I'm one person, and I'm one person because I'm the face, because there's a whole lot of, you know, you the malcontent. And it's, yes, I'm the face of this, but there has been for months a lot of people you don't see behind me, and people that you would probably see more of, including in here, if it wasn't for C disease. And so what does social media manager mean? Social media director mean? Well, we're going to get a little more disciplined, because we have to kind of get a little more disciplined. Things have been kind of shotgunny as far as when we do content. You're probably going to see a lot less of 10 stories getting posted in an hour and then nothing getting posted for the next 23 hours. Those are days like today, where I basically just was heads down and working all day, and I had no time to really focus on, focus on working on the content here. And that's going to take some pressure off of that. And we have some channels that are neglected, particularly our Instagram channel. And we are between Renee and between social media, we are going to have a lot more going in that. I explained on our Facebook page, by the way, Facebook's not going away, Twitter's not going away, Twitch not going away, YouTube, none of that's going away. But something I explained on the Facebook page. We don't like being beholden to Zuckerberg. We don't like having to tap dance around like chuds, where we can't say the C word, so we say C disease. We can refer to it the way it should be referred to on our website, because that's our website, and you know, you can't go complain to Zuckerberg about that and hope that an AI bot goes, oh, these words kind of line up, so maybe the complaint is legit. So we've already kind of started doing that, right? Where there's certain stories that have gone up, and we're linking to the story in Facebook, where we're directing people to go over to the website. There's no ads on the website. I don't want to have to ever put ads on the website, but I'm not going to stand up here and stare in the camera and say never, because you should never say never on something that you can't promise. The other thing is, certainly when I say ads, what I mean by is like Google ads or AdSense or something like that. We would definitely would love to get ads up on there for BIPOC and LGBTQIA businesses that are friendly in that and are supportive to the movement. So something to keep in mind. Oh, by the way, Martial Law Band, because we have a ton of video from you on Monday, and you have an amazing album. You are amazing. We're going to be making an ad for you. So we're going to be pimping another album here when we have the show, and that will be coming up. And so it's another change. Another change that we've had change that we're in the process of making is there's this group of people, but there's people that have been falling into roles, but haven't I don't want to say it's like job titles, because that sounds really formal, but there's been a whole lot of, hey, I can do great, go do it, and we're formalizing that. And so there is going to be on the team now, look, this person's the editor, this person's the researcher, this is going to be the backup person for the researcher, these are the mods and admins. We've added more mods and admins, particularly on the Twitch channel. Now, here's another thing I want to tell everybody that you all have to understand. In this pivot of really moving into a journalistic voice, there's some things, and we've written about this too, and we have talked about this as a team. We need to lengthen the leash, is maybe the best way to put it, on some of the comments that are made in the feeds and in the stories. And you may have noticed a little bit of that this week. You may have noticed some changes in moderation on Monday. You may have noticed some when we did our live feed. You may have noticed some changes in moderation on Wednesday. That doesn't mean that we're going to go ahead and let people brigade and just run wild, and we're going to allow just hate and violent threats. And no, there's going to be standards that will be applied. But we don't want to be an echo chamber. And if we don't allow other reasonable voices into the room, then we just become an echo chamber. And I know there's probably some people hearing that right now. They're probably not happy about hearing that. And we're just going to have to see how it goes. That doesn't mean that we are changing our editorial voice. It doesn't mean that we're going to change what we cover or how we cover things. It just does mean that when it comes to the comments on things, that the boundaries are going to have to expand, because I cannot stand up here as a leader of journalists now, because that's more of what I'm falling into the role of, and say to you that we want to be objective, we want to show the before, during, and after, but we only want to hear voices from the left in the comments. That's not right, it's not fair, it's not who I am. And people that have watched me for 4 years know, I say it all the time, integrity is everything, and that is part of integrity. The other thing I will say, comments on the website, because that's a totally different comment engine on there, don't read the comments there, just because the bar on the website, the bar's got to be even lower there. So my advice is don't read the comments on the new website. You can comment on stuff on Facebook or retweet, or there's other places you can go for that. The last thing I want to talk about, which is part of why this is an off-the-cuff show, it wasn't just the real job. We are going to be doing election night coverage on Tuesday, so there will be no happy hour on Monday, because Monday is going to be all about getting ready for Tuesday, as will almost this entire weekend. We will start our coverage approximately at 3:50 in the afternoon local time, because that will be close to 7 o'clock on the East Coast time. We will be providing analysis. We will be providing information on calling the states. And we are lining up our roles for community managers, researchers. We're going to be live blogging on our website and keep a running tally and an update on that. We're going to have another individual that's going to be just working on making sure, like, the lower ticker and keeping the the results kind of updated on that ticker. And it's not just going to be me talking for 8 hours. We have some video. We'll be playing some older videos. We'll be playing some videos that we haven't aired in a live stream. For instance, we have the Eleanor Jones interview, that entire interview, right? We alluded to it, we posted it, we've never run it. If we come to a slow point or when we're waiting for results, we'll probably throw things like that up. We're also going to do some replays. We'll probably replay some of the 8/16 march to SPOG. We'll probably replay some of the 9/7 march to SPOG. We will do a replay of 6/6. And we will also play. Man, I am mealy-mouthed tonight. We will also play Inequality in America, Challenge of a Generation. We haven't played that in a long time, and there's probably a big audience that hasn't seen it. And we are, again, talked as a team. Moderation on the comments is going to be kind of the same thing. Look, if you're going to come in and just do like yeet yeet or Trump 2020 over and over again because you're clogging the feed, yeah, we're showing you the door. If you're just going to come in and write, ha ha, Biden lost Florida, sucks to be you, we're not going to show that person the door. That's what I mean by, if you keep it moderately respectful, then it's going to be, personal attacks, stuff like that. The other thing is, Facebook has given us a penalty box. We can mute people now for 15 minutes. We used to be able to do that on Facebook a couple of years ago, and they took it away. Facebook has brought it back, and we're like, oh, please let us have this on election day, because that actually will probably about the first line of defense, which is like, we're going to put you in timeout for 15 minutes for you to think about your sins. And if you really want to comment, you'll probably come back after those 15 minutes. And then if you waited 15 minutes to come back and say something to get you kicked out of the room, well, that's just silly. The other thing is stuff, because we look, and stuff that's clearly a bot or a troll, yeah, we're going to show them the door. So I think that's it. And I see like the attempt sounds like trying to nail Jello to a tree. I guess if you're talking about moderation, that would be yes. What's up? What's up? We're finishing up. I've seen the comments going. It's really weird because all I'm getting on the feed here is like this whole list of people who are watching. So let me do this. I'm just going to see if, because it's usually not the way it works. Usually I get to see all y'all's comments. All y'all's. Wow, the Texas just came out. Now I can see everyone's comments. All right, so there was something weird going on. When I reset the app, I could see everybody's comments now. Right, get your questions up. We'll stick around for like 2-3 minutes for questions. Questions, AMA time, and then we're going to call it good. Dora, I think some people can. I see in your question, because I can start to see some questions now. It's totally bizarre. You know, I think some people can. Some people can't. And they're tough conversations to have, particularly, you know, depending on who you're having them with and what that person says. And I've seen on both sides where, you know, somebody will say something and just triggered. And then likewise, I've seen on both sides where both sides were just so close. And we've seen things where, you know, they did come together, and then we've seen things where ultimately they didn't. I think there was an opportunity there to do it. Do you really think we can have an election? You know, so what's my analysis on that? The answer to that is maybe. If you look at the numbers that have come out, if we were, say, talking 7 or 10 days ago, there were a number of polls that were showing contraction. I started to say a lot, but a lot isn't the right way to put it. But showing contraction between the two candidates. That contraction is basically stopped, and the pendulum is starting to swing the other way in a couple of states, and it's starting to swing in the other way in a couple of states. Let me give you an example. Georgia right now, it really does appear that Trump is losing his grip on Georgia. Now, the state is within the margin of error, and I will get into that in a minute. If you look at states like Florida and North Carolina, in the case of Florida, the shrinking of that lead is kind of stopped. If you look at North Carolina, the pendulum is swinging the other way. Now, if we go to Ohio, Ohio is actually starting to look very interesting for Biden about a week ago, and the pendulum is starting to swing the other way. And it's starting to look a lot better for Trump. If you look at states like Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, those states are looking terrible for Trump. Wisconsin in particular. Who'd have thought? You get up in the cameras and you say, "See, disease is going away. It's gone. We've cured it. It's all. I came up with the cure." And Wisconsin's going, "We're out of beds. We're out of beds. And the nurses and doctors don't have enough PPE." And they're like working 24 and 36 hours. So something's not right. And grandma died. She died of C disease. Who'd have thought that would get people to go, maybe I shouldn't listen to you anymore? The interesting thing is that there's some similar weaknesses that are being shown in other states that are having very high rates of C disease. These aren't states that are going to flip, but they are seeing a similar contraction in the polls. For instance, South Dakota, there is a contraction that is going on in the polls. Now, so what's going on is that South Dakota is going from bleeding bright red to just red. And again, I am in no way saying that South Dakota is going to go to Biden. That's a hell freezes over thing. Here's the bottom line. Will Pennsylvania get called? I don't know if Pennsylvania will get called, because the Republican Party is doing everything it can to turn Pennsylvania into a ballot counting shit show. One of the things that they were able to get past there is that the mail-in ballots, which I believe the number I saw was a ridiculously high number there, but early votes and mail-in ballots cannot start being counted until 7 a.m. on election day. So that already has set up in Pennsylvania for a problem, because they're probably not going to churn through. I don't want to say the number. I know the number is 7 digits. It's a huge ass number. And I have a number in my head, but I'm not sure if I'm mixing it up with another state, and so I don't want to say it. They're not going to get through those ballots. As a matter of fact, the officials in Pennsylvania are saying they don't think that those ballots will probably get gone through until about Friday. Most of those ballots are in urban areas that vote very blue. And exit polling information is showing, but we have to take exit polls because they have been wrong with a huge grain of salt. But exit polls are kind of indicating anywhere from 60 to 70% to Biden, so 60-40 to 70-30. So we may see something that we've seen here in Washington at a state level election, where something appears to be red, but it's maybe just a couple of points over. But they're still counting all the ballots in King County, Snohomish County, Pierce County. I know Snohomish County's red and Pierce County's red, is purple, and I know Pierce County is purple. But that pulls the count. And as those go in, we see the pendulum swing the other way. And we've seen that on some of the closer races, even on the state level. If Trump does not win North Carolina, or if Trump does not win Georgia, or if Trump does not win Florida, Or if Trump does not win Ohio, Pennsylvania doesn't matter if any of those states are called. Trump has a really narrow road to the White House without Pennsylvania, if you look at the numbers. So I think, and I'll be talking about this on election night, what I think is the states to watch are going to be Pennsylvania, North Carolina, if you're looking through to Central Time. The states you need to watch are Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa. Those are the states to watch. If Trump takes Michigan or Wisconsin, Biden's in trouble, especially if he doesn't take any of those other states. If, for instance, Biden takes Georgia, it is probably very unlikely that Trump will take Michigan or Wisconsin. And there's technical reasons for that, which would be a whole 1 hour conversation on its own, and I'm not going to get into that. So do I think we're going to know if there's a winner? I think it depends where kind of those key states I just outlined land. And so that's what I think we'll be watching for. Now, if we're watching and you have this scenario where Biden takes, and I'm not saying, I'm just doing the what ifs. So moving, so don't get upset, Trump supporters. I'm just moving pieces on the chessboard. If we see a situation where Biden takes North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, or Florida's even too close to call, and Ohio then becomes too close to call, a state all of a sudden becomes really interesting is Texas all of a sudden becomes really interesting. If you get into a situation where Texas is too close to call or Texas is going blue, then you're starting to think about landslide. So I do think that we have an opportunity. If you look at the poll numbers that are out there in aggregate, both the national numbers and then at the state level numbers. And if you go, okay, let me go ahead and I'll handicap and I'll say that they're off by 2% for Biden. So in other words, Biden's getting undercounted by 2%. Hear me out, Trump supporters. I'm going to go the other way. If you move those numbers up 2%, it is for Trump, it's a bloodbath. It is a blowout. It is a blue wave. The margin right now in Texas is under 2% as an example. So if you bump everything 2%, it's a train wreck for Trump. On the other side of the coin, if you bump everything 3% down, so if you take everything 3% off, it's a tight race, but actually Trump doesn't get enough to win. Now, why is that important? Because the polls were off in 2016 by about 3%. What if you go 4%? That now gets interesting because you're now starting to get into recount territory for Pennsylvania. What if the polls are off by 5%? Now you're looking at Trump being president, but still by a narrow margin. So Trump has a path to the White House. Biden has a path to the White House. There's ultimately about 8 or 9 states / districts, because you have the Maine district and you have the Nebraska districts. And those actually, in a close race, Omaha might get to pick the president. The one district in Maine, I think it's the one that's, that they may get to pick the president. It's a very, very interesting thread the needle scenario there, potentially for both candidates. So Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Ohio, that's what we're going to be watching. And depending on where they flip, it's either going to be a short night or it's going to be a long night, or we're just not going to know. Anyway, long ass answer to your question. You got to be kidding me. Facebook, fix your friggin' app. Oh my goodness. All I'm seeing again is your flipping, all I see is your names. Well, Courtney, there's a lot of stress about, I think a lot of people, and on both sides. It's not just, people are like, people are, oh, Democrat. Read the stuff that's out there. People that are looking at it and are objective, who aren't either screaming, there's going to be a Trump landslide or there's going to be a Biden landslide, because there's people screaming on both sides, right? And they're not looking at it objective. I'm not talking about those folks. Those folks.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Yeah, that's like exactly it. But people who are looking at things objectively, I think there is good reason to be nervous. Certainly, for people who say are, over 40-ish, who would remember 2000 and then remember 2016. 2020 is kind of like and generally the incumbent has leeway. It'll be interesting. Another thing that's happened here, you have 2.6 million Americans who are sitting in the dark tonight because of Hurricane Zeta from non-existent climate change. And we will probably have Tropical Storm Eta in about 4 or 5 more days. There are actually 3 tropical waves in the Atlantic right now, and one of them is actually pretty interesting in turning into a tropical storm. Florida, chances of that actually hitting Florida on election day are tiny, but it's not impossible. It is highly improbable. If you're in Florida and you care about voting, and if you can vote early, go do it, because you don't want to be dealing with a tropical system trying to vote on election day, because then that's just going to cause more chaos. Well, Raymond, that's the other thing, right, that we don't have in 2016 is we don't have Jill Stein, we don't have Gary Johnson, right? Gary Johnson polled at some points as high as 7%. If you look at state like Wisconsin, and was it Pennsylvania also, or was it Michigan? It was either Michigan or Pennsylvania, but I know Wisconsin, Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, they sucked away about 5% of the vote. All of those polls that I'm talking about, 2%, yeah, that is factoring in that about 2% of Americans, because that's kind of all of the third-party candidates together are tracking is at about 2%. But the reality is that Joe Jorgensen for the Libertarian Party, and I actually couldn't even tell you who the Green Party candidate is this year. And I'm pretty plugged in on that stuff. It's like they're not even on the radar. And, Jill, they have no money, they have no airtime, they have no nothing. Gary Johnson was polling just, almost on the brink of getting to the stage on the national debates, and libertarians were upset that he wasn't getting a voice up there, and that the goalposts and the rules were moving and yada yada, if you remember that. I don't think that we have this big third party thing. And then I know the other thing is, and I'm getting into election night conversation, the shy voters, I've covered this multiple times. If you look at the national aggregates and you look at the number of people who say they approve of Trump and the percentage of people who say they're going to vote for Trump, those lines are pretty close. Why is that important? Because somebody who supports Trump is probably not going to say in a poll, I don't support the guy. That's very different in the poll to say you support or approve, I shouldn't say even support, do you approve the job that President Trump is doing? They're more likely going to admit if they are, even if there's going to be people in this with the polls. I told them no, right? It's like, I don't know why people would think that way, because then it hurts dear leader, and it hurts his feelings because he obsesses over these things. He gets very mad. He's very mad at Fox News. Fox News has terrible polls because the Fox News polls are actually really bleak. If you look at the Fox News polls, they're really bleak for dear leader. And if you notice, Fox News does it exactly. We've got this amazing poll. It's like, we did a poll. It's not good. We're going to go to the next story now. Hunter Biden's laptop. We're shopping this story everywhere, but, we can't get it. But, Rudy Giuliani. Hey. I wasn't whacking it. I was trying to tuck my shirt back in. Honest. Rudy. I've done video production for 12 years. I can't count how many people I have set up with lav microphones. I've had some awkward situations. Like, People who've been in video production will know these conversations, right? Because if you're hiding the lav, you generally want to put a lav about here, and you'll use maybe some body tape, or if they have a t-shirt, you may pin it on here. I don't use a lav. I have a mic that on a stand here that's to the next side of me. And C diseases make it a lot more complicated, because now what we basically do is there's your lav with your name on it. You go put it on yourself, and don't worry about hiding if you can't, but that's generally go. So for a woman, the best place to attach a lav is basically right where the bra meets. And I have had a couple of situations where it's kind of like, ooh, okay, you're right. And there's this whole thing on the guidelines and how you're supposed to do it and all, you get permission. Oh my God, I've just had it. It's like, I don't care. The shirt, like, wow, what, wait, no, wow. No, you don't have to do that. No, it's weird. You just made it weird and awkward now. I actually was going to do it from the top, and it's just, anyway. I've had some weird situations, but I have never seen anybody lay flat on their back to retuck their shirt in after a microphone's been taken off. Dudes, do you lay flat on your back, to tuck in your shirt, or do you just tuck in your shirt? If you haven't seen it, it's Borat 2. It's towards the end. Rudy's whacking it. He's gone to San Diego. Going to San Diego. Vague South Park reference there. Lindsay, I don't know if I would necessarily call those key states, but they're definitely the states that will be watching in the early thing, and we'll be explaining that on Tuesday on what to look for in which states, as they start to go in. So, like if North Carolina goes Trump, if Georgia goes Trump, if Pennsylvania is declared for Trump, clearly for Trump, Florida goes Trump. Then if that one district in Maine goes Trump, but I have said all along, where New Hampshire goes, that district in Maine is going to go. I've said that all along, and interestingly, some of the other pundits are starting to say that now too. Then I think Biden is starting to, to thread the needle, and Arizona starts becoming a lot more important. And Arizona was looking like, hey, piece of cake. And now, when I've been like, he's going to win Arizona, he's like, I'm feeling Arizona's a little bit of a coin toss. If any of those states I just listed off are declared for Biden, Trump's in huge trouble. If Trump doesn't win like Ohio or Iowa, he's about sunk. Even if he kind of wins the states, even if Arizona at that point, he's kind of sunk. And the reality is, if he doesn't win a state like Iowa or Ohio, he probably won't win Arizona. And again, if he wins a state like Georgia and Iowa, he may not win Texas. So it's not necessarily their key states, it's just states that will help read the tea leaves. Now, here's the other thing is, we will not be declaring or calling states until, other services have called, said we are not going to, it is improper, it is technically illegal also for us to call. We will be providing analysis. We will be looking just as some of the others do, like, hey, we're looking at this particular county and we're watching the numbers come in, and, we're seeing these percentages there, and the difference between, we're going to have all that capability to do all that stuff in-house. So... And I literally have to reset the flipping. Facebook, fix your problems. I hate the new interface because it's not fully baked. And I know people probably on Twitch are like, they're not feeling the love. So Raymond, a little bit of a funny story. We don't know. Every day, everyone's like, you coordinate with, they don't tell anybody where they're going. The only people I think that ever get told are the legal observers, because I see the legal observers show up. They certainly don't tell us or any of the streamers. And I continue to say, I don't want to know. It goes back to this whole plausible deniability. And I think it's just a line you don't want to cross. So we don't want to know. So I actually, we streamed yesterday, and of course you generally don't see me in those streams because I don't do the CJTV thing where somebody has a camera on me. I was just in street clothes. I was not in like the whole get up. So I just jeans and everything. And when we initially, this is where we're going, My first thought was, we're going to Spog? We're going to Spog tonight? It was like the first EDM I had done in a while, right? Because I've been kind of doing ENDD or day marches or in studio stuff. So I hadn't done EDM in a while. The last time I kind of went to other video things and I went to EDM is like where are we going? Where are we? And we ended up in Mike Solin's house. And I'm like, oh, are we going to Mike Solin's clubhouse tonight? And no, we didn't end up going there. But I was lamenting with another streamer. It's like, I don't have my knee pads. I don't have my cup. I don't have, it's like, I'm so not ready for spice tonight. Which, of course, lesson learned, you should be ready for spice all the time. Just adjusting his underwear. I just... I know, every dude Raven stands to tuck up their shirt. Every dude. If you're telling me you lay down to tuck in your shirt, that is just such BS. It's just... Not to mention, he tried to pat her on the ass and stuff right before he did all that shit. I mean, come on. It's just gross. There's some other things in that thing, as somebody who's Jewish, there's some things in there that I'm just like, no. I mean, I get it. I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to make fun of the Holocaust deniers, but Sasha, you got to find a better way to do it. That I guess the meeting he had with the woman in the synagogue who is a Holocaust survivor, I guess they have a very, very extensive interview with her, and they are planning to release that entire interview. So that will be good to see. Well, Kimberly, the thing is in Arizona is that McSally is unpopular. There were a couple of polls that came out that showed that McSally had completely closed the gap on Kelly. And now there's been some other polls that said they're making those polls that look like they're outliers. But there is no denying if there's two states that you can look at if you're riding with Biden. There are two states you could look at. It's Florida and Arizona that have squeezed. Now, equal opportunity here. If you're a Trump supporter, I would say the three states that you're looking at that you probably were like, Trump train, and you're probably now going, I'm not feeling so good about it. It's Iowa, Georgia, and Ohio, right? Those states have squeezed. And in the case of Iowa, that state is flipped. And in the states of Georgia, that state is flipped. The question is how much? I think in the case of Iowa, I think you have a perfect storm of issues that have happened there. I think one, you had the derecho that came through and 43% of the crops have been wiped out and federal aid was not been released to people who lost their homes or small farms that have lost the crops. The subsidy money have gone to factory farms, not the small farmers. You have Joni Ernst, who is become really unpopular in that state. She was already kind of holding on, but she really dropped the ball on this soybean question. I lived in South Dakota for 18 months, right on the Iowa border. I always like to say it was 17 months too long. Farming is everything. I worked with people. I was there for a tech company. I think you could probably figure it out if you're of a certain age. There were people that worked at that tech company that, worked in high-level white-collar jobs that had 50, 100, 200 head of pigs. They still had a farm, these small farms, and they were losing their shirts back then because the price of pork was just in the toilet. And there are people I'm working with that they were working at the certain computer company I'm talking about in part to kind of sustain the farm because, they went to college and all, there's all this job opportunities there. And those are the people that have been screwed over. And those are the people that are, because Iowa is this purple state, right? There isn't this huge loyalty one way or the other. It definitely has gone more red in the last 20 years. And then I think the third thing is this thing that I alluded to is you have a state that's basically in denial on C disease. And the proof is just, the ugly proof is just, right? And you have the president and his surrogates going, it's going away. It's no problem. Look at me, right? And somebody's husband or wife or brother or sister or son or daughter ends up in the hospital, and they're like, they're going to get Remdesivir, right? And they're like, there's no Remdesivir. What do you think? My mother couldn't get it. My mother was in the hospital. She was almost put on a vent. She couldn't get it because it wasn't available. And you better believe that people were like, see, look at all the treatment I got. No, you didn't get the treatment that everybody else gets. And you also didn't get handed a $250,000 bill at the end. Mr. President, the American taxpayers covered that for you, as we will continue to cover for him when he leaves the White House. Just remember that little wonderful tidbit. So in Arizona, I know I've like totally segued. In Arizona, you have this similar situation. McSally is really unpopular there. Kelly is the husband of the congresswoman who was shot. Oh, my goodness, her name's escaping me. Right in this mass attack that happened at a campaign event there. She was a Republican at the time that happened, if I remember correctly. And then you also just have kind of this legacy of John McCain. And I know there's some recall attempts and blah, blah, but McCain just won and won and won and won and won. And Arizona likes McCain. And, going to build the wall. The wall wasn't built. He built 400 miles of wall. Almost all 400 miles of that replaced existing wall. And most of it wasn't any of this new, big, beautiful, wonderful, amazing wall. And Mexico didn't pay for one friggin' cent of it. By the way, Canada, for all intents and purposes, built a virtual wall between us and the United States because they don't want our plague-infested asses in their country. Just think about that. So I think it'll be very interesting to kind of see where things go. And like, seriously, I have to keep resetting the app so I can see your questions. It's beyond irritating. Gabby Giffords. Yes, thank you, Kimberly. That's it. The husband, Kelly, is the astronaut who is the husband of Gabby Giffords. Yes, thank you very, very much. Oh, I know you're talking about. Well, I watched Eric. I was watching Eric when he got hit in the rocks, and I ordered a cup the next day. So, and I have said it on the air, and I've said it on the streams. If you're male and you're protesting, and you're not gonna have a respirator, you're not gonna have any of that stuff, wear a cup. You want to wear a cup. Oh, Lindsay, I totally get it. And I know that I get where Sacha Baron Cohen was going with the whole thing. And again, I get what he is doing on Holocaust denial. As somebody who's Jewish faith, the joke landed flat for me. It really, it did. I totally get where he's going, but the joke landed flat for whatever that's worth. That's just my 2 cents. I'm going to stick by it. I think we're going to wrap it up. I've probably been on a lot longer than I wanted. Yes, I've been on 30 minutes longer than I wanted. Y'all have kept me with the questions, which is cool. There's probably only normally when it runs long like this and I'm just blathering, we don't get a lot of people watching. So anyway, malcontent, that's it. Be good to each other. Going to probably be a pretty low profile on all channels unless some really big news event happens locally. We're probably going to have a pretty low profile going into Tuesday, and then it's going to be really, really big. And that's what's going on. So with that, I say, Malcontent, out. The Malcontentment Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Sorry about that. Normally I muted out. And see, this worked. I saw the thing mute. The reason I popped back on, we do have some additional information coming out of Hazel Dell. We have a name, but we're working on confirming the name before we release that. But what we know out of Hazel Dell is that it is a multiple agency involved police department. The Camas Police Department is investigating the shooting. Hazel Dell and Clark County officers were both involved in the shooting. The individual that was shot was a BIPOC individual, Black Indigenous person of color. The information we have supports that the individual is a Black individual. And there are multiple reports from witnesses on the scene that individual was completely unarmed and was running from police, not towards gun or anything like that. That is the sum total of what we know. What we do know is that there is a officer involved shooting, one individual dead, Hazel Dell, Washington, and the Camas Police Department is engaged with the investigation with that. And so I just wanted to pop on and give you that information, and we're going to continue with the closing credits.
You fit the profile! You're the malcontent!
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontents Antifa, fuck you!
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.